The blustery cold evening of November 5th, 1990, in Midtown Manhattan, was always met with a consistent wind which blew east of the Hudson River, giving the city a wave of unrelenting, icy winter. The Marriott Hotel, located at 525 Lexington Avenue, which crosses Lexington Avenue and East 48th Street, is rather large and has a decorative view for any passerby who aren't a native to the city. It was here a known Jewish militant was holding a venue to espouse his anti-Arab ideologies. Mayor David Kahane, otherwise known as Meir Kahane, was a Jewish rabbi who founded the Jewish Defense League, or the JDL. The JDL itself was founded upon the stated principle to protect Jews from anti-Semitism by any means necessary. A far-right wing political group, it is labeled a hate group by the FBI and the Southern Poverty Law Center. Kahane was born in Flatbush, Brooklyn in 1932. From there, he would begin his education at the yeshiva in Flatbush. He followed the works of Ze'ev Jablonski, a Jewish revisionist and founder of the Jewish Self-Defense Organization in Odessa, Russia. Kahane received his rabbinical ordination from the Meir Yeshiva in Brooklyn. In 1954, the FBI had noticed Kahane's staunch position against communism. Thus, Kahane became a consultant for the Bureau. His task was to infiltrate the John Birch Society and report back his findings with his handlers. Kahane used a pseudonym when he was with the Birch group, Michael King, and he was always dressed and acted as if he was a moderate Christian. He won the trust of those within the board members very quickly. Kahane was a charismatic orator and passionate about Israel being a state allowed to use force, if necessary, to achieve it, being a strictly Jewish state. On the evening hours of November 5th, 1990, he was going to give an hour-long lecture regarding the standing of the JDL, Israeli politics, which have been exceptionally detrimental to achieving a sole Jewish state. Kahane long understood he was a target for the Jewish intelligence agency, the Mossad, and even admitted that he would be likely killed by assassination. This followed his position within the Koch Party, an ultranational sect within the Knesset, founded by Kahane in 1971 when he immigrated to Israel. It was disbanded in 1994. The Koch Party, however, was aimed at the sole goal, to make Israel a Jewish-only state. The lecture at the Eastside Hotel was organized by Zero, Zionist Emergency Evacuation Rescue Organization. Approximately 60 people attended to hear Kahane that evening. Many were from the Flatbush section where he was born. Shortly after, Kahane was surrounded by a small group who were asking follow-up questions and well-wishing the enigmatic rabbi. It was approximately 9:03 p.m. when a man wearing a kippah, a Jewish hat, began to make his way toward the group surrounding Kahane. He did not immediately notice the man who extended his right arm, which was holding a .357 caliber handgun. A single shot was fired, hitting him squarely in the neck. Kahane fell, and the preceding commotion was pandemonium. One eyewitness stated, "I heard the sound of a cannon, one shot, and all of a sudden there was a second shot, and I feared the worst," recalled Shannon Taylor, who attended the lecture. The shooter immediately fled the hotel. However, right behind El Said Nosser, a furious mob followed. Kahane's attendees and some within his closest circle began to chase after the assassin. The assassin was expecting a yellow cab to be waiting for him. When he did not see him immediately, he entered another which was waiting by Lexington and 49th Street. The driver was not known to this assailant. However, the driver noticed the gun which he was holding. El Said Nosser noticed the crowd coming from behind him and left the cab. Running down the street, the chant of "Get him" from the mob was heard by Carlos Acosta, a police officer for the United States Postal Inspection Service, who was armed himself. Acosta saw the assailant running directly at him, and he drew his pistol, ordering him to freeze. El Said Nosser drew his weapon, but not in time. As both men exchanged fire, Nosser was hit in the chin. However, Acosta had been hit in the chest. Both men fell. The assailant, however, was captured by the officers and the mob. The cold street was beginning to fill up with a menacing mob of Kahane followers and bystanders now running to the commotion. Ambulances shortly arrived, first taking Acosta, then the assassin, El Sayed Nosair, to Bellevue Hospital. It was also where the mortally wounded Kahane had went to. 10:16 p.m., Bellevue Hospital surgeons tried to resuscitate Kahane, but to no avail. He would expire from his wound. NYPD detectives would run a check on El Sayed Nosair, who lived from the gunfire exchange from Acosta. They found out that Nosair had an address located in Jersey City, New Jersey. He was also quite known to the Joint Terrorism Task Force and the FBI, for they had been monitoring him from his days at the Masjid al-Salam in Jersey City, and also a member of the Al-Farouq Mosque in Brooklyn. El Sayed Nosair was a devout follower of the Egyptian radical Omar Abdel Rahman, who was also known as the Blind Sheikh, an Egyptian terrorist from the group Gamma Islamiyah, who was on a terrorist watch list, however, entered the United States in 1990 under an approved U.S. visa in Cairo, Egypt, which was approved by CIA case officers who were dressed as visa officers. Nosair was charged with the murder of Rabbi Meir Kahane. Nosair turned his head and mumbled something which the NYPD couldn't understand. Meanwhile, detectives would retrieve a search warrant for El Sayed Nosair's Jersey City apartment located at 40 Pemrampo Avenue. While they entered, they also detained two men who were also there, Mahmoud Abalima and Mohammed Salame. Both men were members of the Al-Farouq and Masjid al-Salam in Jersey City, New Jersey, Al-Farouq located in Brooklyn near Flatbush. Detectives began a thorough search of the premises. They would find a multitude of incriminating items. They would shock the authorities and begin wondering if they had uncovered a hidden radical cell operating in secret. What they found were thousands of rounds of ammunition, maps and drawings of New York City landmarks, including the World Trade Center, documents in Arabic containing bomb-making formulas, details of an Islamic militant cell, and mentions of the term Al-Qaeda, recorded sermons by Sheikh Omar Abdel Rahman, in which he encourages his followers to destroy the edifices of capitalism, destroy the enemies of Allah by destroying their high world buildings. Tape recorded phone conversations of Nosair reporting to Abdel Rahman about paramilitary training and even discussing bomb-making manuals. Videotape talks that Ali Muhammad delivered at the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Top secret manuals also from Fort Bragg. There are even classified documents belonging to the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Commander-in-Chief of the Army Central Command. These manuals and documents had clearly come from Muhammad, who completed military service at Fort Bragg the year before and frequently stayed in Nosair's house. And a detailed and top secret plan for Operation Bright Star, a special operations training exercise simulating an attack on Baluchistan, part of Pakistan between Afghanistan and the Arabian Sea. It was an astonishing find. NYPD detectives assigned to the Kahane Nosair case also found within hours of connection a surveillance photographs of Ali Muhammad giving weapons training to Nosair, Abalima, Salame, and others at a shooting range the year before, which was located at the shooting range in Calverton, Long Island. Just 3 days later, however, Joseph Borelli from the Joint Terrorism Task Force, the New York City's police department chief detective, would declare that the shooting was the result of a lone gunman, that the evidence of a large Arab terrorist cell was unfounded. The declaration was shocking, to say the least, even with the evidence collected from the Jersey apartment of Nosair alone would contradict the statement made by Borelli. It was later found out that Ali Muhammad was basically a triple spy for the CIA, the FBI, and Osama bin Laden and Omar Abdel Rahman. He'd been playing the CIA and the FBI for years. Kahane followers would also come under fire, as many would become more radicalized in their deeds here and in Israel. Hate crimes against Arabs had risen, and while this was transpiring, militant followers of Blind Sheikh Abdel Rahman began a furious defense for Nosair, led by William Kunstler, who would be chosen as the defense lawyer for Nosair. Kunstler was not an unknown. One of the most radical lawyers known on the East Coast. He had a penchant for going against the grain, immediately coming under fire by local Jewish residents as they would often hold daily protests just feet away from where he lived. Nosair would miraculously be found not guilty for Kahane's murder in December of 91. Kunstler was revered in the Islamic community in Brooklyn. However, Nosair was found guilty of possessing a firearm and for shooting Acosta. The judge in the trial, Justice Alvin Schlesinger, said that the jury's acquittal of Nosair on the murder charge was against the overwhelming weight of evidence and was devoid of common sense and logic. On January 29, 1992, he sentenced Nosair to 7.5 to 22 years in prison, the maximum allowed. The connection to radical Islamist Omar Abdel-Rahman was never recognized by either the NYPD or the FBI, well until after the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. The 47 boxes of evidence collected at Nosair's house that evening were stored away, inaccessible to prosecutors and investigators. The documents found would not be translated until after the World Trade Center bombing. It wasn't until then that the evidence of a large-scale Islamist operation was indeed well-founded, and more so, many within the NYPD Joint Terrorism Task Force years later, however, began to suspect that the FBI was not fully cooperating with the Joint Terrorism Task Force. The FBI had blamed it on inadequate resources and inexperience. Kahane's militant followers continue to exist, even to the present day. Otzma Yehudit, an extremist and radical group with roots in Kahanist political philosophy, has been labeled a hate group, even by the nationalist Likud party in the Knesset. The group considers Arabs and other non-Jews in Israel to be enemies of the state and supports replacing Israel's democratic government with a theocratic structure. Postal Officer Carlos Acosta was presented with the Meritorious Service Award by Chief Postal Inspector Charles Clausen on November 28, 1990. He recovered fully from his wound from Nosair. After the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, Nosair was found guilty of being a participant of the Landmarks bombing plot, which also saw convictions of multiple people from the Masjid al-Salam Mosque, which included blind Sheikh Omar Abdel-Rahman. All received life sentences. Nosair is currently serving his in Marion, Illinois, of maximum federal penitentiary. Kahane's radical view for a Jewish state has yet still come to pass. His views regarding about the return of the Messiah and the world becoming renewed was no more pronounced during a 1985 interview with French journalists Raphael Merguez and Philippe Chemonot, whom both would author the book Israel's Ayatollahs, the Far Right in Israel. Kahane would have a lengthy back and forth with the two Frenchmen who ardently questioned Kahane about his faith and his belief and the Messiah. Question: in your dreams, how do you visualize the Middle East? Kahane: if the Jewish people do what God wants, if they return to Israel, and if they come back to being what God wants them to be, then the Messiah will come. At that time, we'll have peace not only in the Middle East, but all over the world. Question: then there will be no peace before the advent of the Messiah. Kahane: no way. We can't have peace any other way. A rabbi once said, to deceive other people is a terrible thing, but to deceive oneself is a crime. We can't have peace here. The Arabs sincerely believe, and I can understand them, that Haifa belongs to them, and Tel Aviv, and Jaffa, not just to Judea and Samaria. They sincerely believe, and again, I can understand them, that this country belongs to them. In 1948, 80,000 Arabs lived in Jaffa. There were 70,000 in Haifa, and 50,000 in Ramallah, and in Lod. They want to go back home. They don't want to go to Nablus or to Jericho. They want to return home. Up until the last elections, they believed that they would be able to return home within 10 years. Now everybody is nervous. I have no doubt that I will soon be in the government, and everybody knows that I'm going to have a say in what has got to happen. Everything I'm telling you now, I've been saying for 20 years, and I'll say it again tomorrow. The biggest error would be to believe that once Kahane gets into power, he'll be more moderate. That's not true at all. I'm bound by the halakha as much by the obligation of the Sabbath. Just as I'm not going to stop respecting the Sabbath, I'm not going to stop saying what I am saying to you now. The Messiah still has not arrived, and the land of Israel continues to see internal strife between Jew and Arab. Kahanists continue to force the issue of a state only for Jews through guerrilla tactics and terrorist acts from the hilltop youth. They have much in common with their supposed adversaries, the Islamic State. Just like Meir and Kahane 30 years ago.